And I hope we see you back here.
Absolutely. I mean, it's
looking for you tonight in this match.
well, I think everything. He did before every match. I always try to eat sushi. I love it. So that's try different things.
Carlos Alcaraz destroyed, $500,000 fine, cheating scandal, and career in ruins. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal is not just another tennis controversy. This is a full-blown earthquake that's shaking the Australian Open to its very foundation. We're talking about a scandal so massive, so unprecedented, that it makes every racket-smashing tantrum and umpire argument look like a polite disagreement at a country club tea party. The Golden Boy. The savior of tennis. The world number one. Carlos Alcaraz. His career might be over before it truly began. In a development that has sent shockwaves rippling through the entire sporting world, ATP officials and Australian Open tournament directors have just detonated a nuclear bomb right in the middle of Melbourne Park. We're talking about a record-shattering, career-destroying, absolutely mind-blowing $500,000 fine. $500,000. Let that number sink in for a moment. But here's the thing, the money is actually the least of Carlos Alcaraz's problems right now. The accusation? Technological doping. Those two words together should terrify every single person who loves this sport. Officials are claiming that the Whoop Fitness wristband that Alcaraz wore during his fourth-round destruction of American Tommy Paul wasn't just passively tracking his recovery and sleep patterns. According to leaked reports from inside the investigation, data forensics experts have discovered evidence of haptic feedback being activated during crucial moments of the match. That's right, they're saying the device was vibrating, potentially sending signals, possibly coaching him in real time while he was out there competing. His semifinal showdown against Alexander Zverev? Suspended indefinitely. The investigation? Going global with forensic technology experts. The reputation of tennis's brightest young superstar? Hanging by the thinnest possible thread over a cliff of public disgrace. This is Court Vision Plus, and today we're going deep, deeper than we've ever gone before, into the scandal that's being called Wristband Gate. We've got the inside details on the massive fine, the technology at the center of this storm, the alleged rule violations, and the absolutely catastrophic fallout that's threatening to tear apart the 2026 Australian Open. If you care about tennis, if you care about fair play, if you care about the truth, you need to stay with me until the very last word of this investigation. Hit that like button right now if you want the unfiltered truth, and subscribe to Court Vision Plus so you don't miss a single update as this story continues to develop hour by hour. Let's dive into the chaos. The number that's blazing across every sports network, every news channel, every social media platform on planet Earth right now is absolutely staggering. $500,000. $500,000. To give you some perspective on just how massive this figure is, tennis players typically get fined a few $1,000s for smashing a racket in frustration. Maybe $10,000 for verbally abusing an umpire. Perhaps $20,000 for skipping mandatory press conferences. But $500,000? That's not a fine. That's a statement. That's a declaration of war. That's the ATP and tournament officials saying we will not tolerate what we believe you've done. This morning, as the sun rose over Melbourne Park and fans started lining up for what they thought would be a normal day of world-class tennis, officials dropped a bombshell statement that instantly made every other sports story completely irrelevant. After conducting what they're calling a thorough and comprehensive inspection of the wearable technology worn by Carlos Alcaraz throughout the entire tournament, they claim to have found serious irregularities that they believe constitute a severe and deliberate breach of Grand Slam regulations, ITF rules, and the fundamental principles of fair play that tennis has been built upon for over a century. The device at the absolute center of this mushroom cloud of controversy is the Whoop 4.0 fitness tracker. For those who aren't familiar with this technology, Whoop is one of the biggest names in the wearable fitness space. It's a fabric strap that continuously monitors your physiological data, tracking things like cardiovascular strain, recovery metrics, sleep quality, heart rate variability, and respiratory rate. Millions of people around the world wear these devices. Professional athletes across every major sport use them religiously. Carlos Alcaraz has been a proud brand ambassador for Whoop. He wears it constantly, in training, in recovery, and yes, during matches. But here's where the situation gets incredibly complicated and potentially explosive. Under normal ATP Tour rules, the tournaments like Madrid, Miami, Indian Wells, and Rome, wearable technology is generally permitted for what's called passive data collection. That means the device records what your body is doing so that you and your coaching team can analyze the information later. You finish a brutal 5-set match, you sit down with your coach and sports scientists, and you look at the data. Maybe your heart rate spiked dangerously high in the 4th set. Maybe your recovery between points was slower than optimal. Maybe you didn't sleep well the night before. This information helps athletes optimize their training and preparation. It's become standard practice in modern professional sports. But Grand Slam tournaments operate under a completely different set of rules. The Australian Open, along with Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and the US Open, are governed by the International Tennis Federation, and they maintain a very different, significantly stricter, and some would say more traditional approach to technology. The cardinal rule, the absolute foundation of tennis integrity, is simple and unambiguous. No outside assistance. None. 0. During a match, you are alone. You versus your opponent. Your mind versus their mind. Your body versus their body. No coaching. No signals. No technological help. The ATP's explosive statement alleges that Carlos Alcaraz's device was not operating in passive mode. They claim it wasn't just listening to his body and recording data for later analysis. They're saying it was actively communicating with him during competition. The specific term they've used in official documentation is haptic feedback, and if you're not familiar with that term, let me explain exactly what it means and why it's so incredibly damaging to Alcaraz's defense. Haptic feedback is essentially a vibration or tactile response. Your smartphone does it when you receive a text message. Your smartwatch does it when you hit your daily step goal or when it's time to stand up and move around. Your car steering wheel does it when you drift out of your lane. It's a physical signal that communicates information without sound or visual display. But imagine, just for a moment, what a vibration on your wrist could potentially mean in the middle of a high-stakes Grand Slam match. Could it be a prearranged signal from someone in your coaching box? Could it be a programmed rhythm designed to help regulate your heart rate and breathing during moments of extreme stress? Could it be a wake-up call alerting you that your intensity has dropped below optimal levels? Could it be tactical information about your opponent's patterns? The possibilities are genuinely endless, and that's what makes this situation so terrifying for the integrity of the sport. The officials aren't just throwing around theories and speculation. They're claiming to have hard evidence. They say they've extracted data logs directly from the device. They claim to have precise timestamps that correspond to specific, crucial moments during the 4th-round match against Tommy Paul, moments where Alcaraz's performance and demeanor suddenly and dramatically shifted. They're building a case, and according to sources close to the investigation, the evidence is substantial enough that they felt confident imposing the largest disciplinary fine in modern tennis history. Picture this scenario playing out on Rod Laver Arena. Alcaraz is down a break in the 2nd set. The pressure is mounting. The humidity is crushing. His heart rate is climbing. He's breathing heavily. He looks down at his wrist. He feels a subtle vibration. Suddenly, mysteriously, his entire demeanor changes. He takes a deep breath. He slows down. His heart rate stabilizes. He changes his tactical approach. He breaks back immediately and goes on a run that completely turns the match around. Is that the result of incredible mental toughness and natural talent? Or is that technology intervening in real time to give him an unfair advantage that his opponent doesn't have access to? That's the $500,000 question that's tearing the tennis world apart right now. Let's rewind the clock and go back to that fourth-round encounter with Tommy Paul, because in retrospect, with all this new information flooding out, that match has taken on an entirely different and deeply suspicious character. At the time, when we were watching it live, it seemed like just another display of Carlos Alcaraz's supernatural talent. He was athletic, explosive, creative, relentless. He hit shots that seemed to defy physics. He retrieved balls that should have been winners. He entertained the crowd with his infectious energy and smile. But now, forensic video analysts and tennis experts are going back through every single frame of that match footage with an entirely different lens, and what they're finding is raising some extremely troubling questions. There were specific moments in that match, particularly during a crucial stretch in the second set, where Alcaraz appeared to be struggling significantly. He was breathing heavily, almost gasping for air. The Melbourne humidity was absolutely brutal that day. Tommy Paul was playing some of the best tennis of his entire career, moving Alcaraz from corner to corner, really making him work for every single point. Do you remember the moment? If you go back and watch the footage now, it's right there in plain sight. There was a brief pause between points. Alcaraz adjusted his wristband. He wiped his forehead with that same wrist. He tapped the device. He looked at it. At the time, the television commentators didn't think anything of it whatsoever. They casually mentioned that it was a hot day in Melbourne, that Alcaraz was sweating profusely, that he was simply adjusting his equipment like any athlete would do 100 times during a match. Nobody suspected anything unusual. Nobody thought twice about it. But the leaked reports emerging from the ongoing investigation paint a radically different picture. They suggest that this seemingly innocent moment was the exact timestamp when a haptic event, a vibration, was logged and recorded by the device's internal memory. The data is supposedly right there in black and white, irrefutable digital evidence that something happened at that precise moment. Within seconds, maybe 15 or 20 seconds after that adjustment, Alcaraz's entire demeanor and performance level transformed completely. His heart rate, which his team can monitor and analyze after the match, apparently stabilized dramatically. His breathing became more controlled and rhythmic. He stopped making unforced errors. His shot selection became sharper and more tactical. He went on an absolutely devastating run of tennis that left Tommy Paul scrambling, confused, and ultimately broken. The American never recovered. Alcaraz cruised through the rest of the match looking like a completely different player than he had been just minutes earlier. Did the wristband send him a signal to regulate his breathing? Did it remind him to slow down his heart rate using techniques he's practiced with sports psychologists? Did it deliver some kind of pre-programmed tactical reminder? We don't know for certain, but the investigation is trying to answer exactly those questions. Tommy Paul himself has been remarkably quiet publicly about this entire situation, but sources extremely close to his inner circle say that he and his team are absolutely furious. Just imagine for a moment what it would feel like to step onto a Grand Slam court, to play against the world number one, to give absolutely everything you have physically and mentally, to execute your game plan perfectly, to have him on the ropes, and then to discover weeks later that he might have had what essentially amounts to a wearable computer on his wrist providing him with real-time biofeedback and potentially coaching signals. It would feel like a betrayal. It would feel like you were competing in two completely different sports. It's comparable to playing chess against someone who has a hidden earpiece with a supercomputer whispering the optimal next move. The investigation has reportedly identified not just one isolated incident, but multiple instances of this suspicious haptic feedback throughout the entire tournament. We're not just talking about the Tommy Paul match anymore. Officials are now going back and examining data from every single match Alcaraz has played in Melbourne. His first round match against Zhang Junqing. His second round victory. His third round win over Lorenzo Sonego. Every opponent he's faced potentially has a legitimate grievance now. If the allegations are proven true, every single one of those players could demand an investigation. They could appeal results. They could sue for prize money. They could demand ranking points be redistributed. The administrative and legal chaos this could create is genuinely unimaginable. This isn't just about a minor technical rule violation that gets sorted out with a small fine and a warning. This strikes at the absolute heart and soul of what sport is supposed to be. Tennis, more than almost any other major sport, is built on the concept of individual combat. It's gladiatorial. It's one human being against another human being. One mind versus another mind. One will versus another will. When you step onto that court, especially at a Grand Slam, you're alone. No timeouts. No substitutions. No team huddles. Just you and your opponent and your ability to solve problems, to adapt, to dig deep when everything hurts and you can barely breathe. If you introduce a machine, an algorithm, a device that can regulate your nervous system for you or deliver tactical information, are you even playing the same fundamental sport anymore? Or have you crossed the line into something else entirely, something that fundamentally undermines everything tennis has stood for throughout its history? Now let's talk about what's happening right now, in real time, the immediate and absolutely devastating fallout. The tennis world had been counting down the hours to what was supposed to be a blockbuster, can't-miss, edge-of-your-seat semifinal showdown. Carlos Alcaraz versus Alexander Zverev. This matchup represents one of the defining rivalries of this new generation of tennis. Zverev with his massive serve, crushing ground strokes, and improved mental toughness. Alcaraz with his supernatural speed, impossible shot-making, and infectious joy for competition. The Rod Laver Arena was completely sold out. Ticket prices on the secondary market had skyrocketed into the thousands of dollars. Fans from around the world had traveled to Melbourne specifically for this match. Television networks had cleared their schedules. This was supposed to be the match of the tournament. And now? Suspended. Postponed indefinitely. Thrown into complete chaos. The official ATP statement was chillingly bureaucratic and absolutely unprecedented in its scope. They announced that they will be conducting a comprehensive inspection of all personal equipment used by Carlos Alcaraz in advance of his scheduled semifinal against Alexander Zverev. And when they say all equipment, they mean everything. His shoes. His rackets. His clothing. His bag. His wristbands. His headbands. Everything will be examined using specialized technological equipment to ensure there is absolutely no hidden assistive technology anywhere in his possession. This is completely unprecedented in the modern history of tennis. They're not just confiscating the controversial Whoop wristband. They're seizing everything he owns and plan to use in the match. They're treating him like a suspected criminal in a science fiction movie where the authorities are searching for hidden technology. They're taking his shoes. Why would they take his shoes? Because smart insole technology exists and is commercially available. These insoles can track pressure distribution across your foot, measure your footwork speed and efficiency, analyze your movement patterns, and even detect when you're favoring one leg due to fatigue or minor injury. Could there be sensors embedded in Alcaraz's shoes? The officials are going to find out. They're seizing his rackets. Why his rackets? Because sensor technology that fits inside racket handles absolutely exists. These sensors can measure swing speed, impact location on the string bed, spin rate, and ball speed. Professional players use this technology all the time in practice. But is it allowed during Grand Slam competition? That's debatable, and they're checking. They're inspecting his clothing. His shirts. His shorts. His compression gear. Why? Because sensor technology can be woven directly into fabric now. Smart clothing exists that can monitor muscle activation, body temperature, breathing patterns, and more. Are there sensors in Alcaraz's outfit? They're going to find out. Carlos Alcaraz's equipment is essentially sitting in what amounts to an evidence locker somewhere in the secure areas beneath Melbourne Park. Forensic technology experts are examining every item with equipment that can detect radio frequencies, Bluetooth signals, electronic components, and any other technology that shouldn't be there. The semifinal against Zverev hasn't been officially canceled yet, but it exists in a state of complete limbo. The tournament officials have made it absolutely clear that they will not allow Carlos Alcaraz to step onto Rod Laver Arena until they are 100% certain, beyond any possible doubt, that he is completely clean of any technological doping, any hidden devices, any unfair advantages. Just think about what Carlos Alcaraz must be going through mentally and emotionally right now. He should be in his hotel room visualizing his serve patterns. He should be getting a massage from his physiotherapist. He should be eating his carefully planned pre-match meal. He should be listening to music and getting into the zone mentally for the biggest match of the tournament. Instead, he's almost certainly sitting in a conference room somewhere with his lawyers, his agents, his management team, and tournament directors, fighting desperately to save his reputation while unknown technicians. He's sitting in his hotel room in a state of complete uncertainty. Does he prepare to play the match? Does he go through his normal pre-match routine? Does he hit practice serves? Does he visualize the matchup? Or does he prepare mentally for the possibility of receiving a walkover and advancing straight to the Australian Open final without playing? Zverev has been extremely vocal in the past about issues of fair play and integrity in tennis. Remember his very public and angry complaints about Stefanos Tsitsipas and the extended bathroom breaks? Zverev absolutely hates anything that even smells like an unfair advantage or bending the rules. You can bet he's watching this entire situation develop with the intensity of a hawk circling prey. If Alcaraz is disqualified, Zverev advances to the final automatically. But is that really how any competitor wants to win? By default? By technicality? By his opponent being thrown out of the tournament? Zverev has worked his entire career to win a Grand Slam title. He's come so close so many times. He's had heartbreaking losses in finals. Does he really want his first major championship to come with a giant asterisk next to it because his opponent was disqualified for technological cheating? Of course, every story has multiple sides, and the Alcaraz camp is not taking these accusations lying down. They're fighting back with everything they have, and they're fighting hard. Within literal minutes of the fine being publicly announced, Alcaraz's team, led by his legendary coach and former French Open champion Juan Carlos Ferrero, issued an absolutely furious statement denying the allegations in the strongest possible terms. They're calling the accusations absurd, completely baseless, and nothing short of a coordinated witch hunt designed to tear down tennis's brightest young star. Their defense rests on what they argue is a simple, irrefutable fact. The whoop strap is a passive recovery and monitoring device. Period. Full stop. End of story. It records data. It does not provide coaching. It does not send tactical signals. It does not give competitive advantages during play. They acknowledge that yes, the device has haptic feedback capability, but they insist that what the officials detected was nothing more than a standard, completely innocent system notification. Maybe it was a low battery warning telling Alcaraz he needed to charge it later. Maybe it was a Bluetooth disconnect alert because his phone was too far away. Or, and this is perhaps the most plausible and innocent explanation of all, maybe it was simply an alarm or reminder that was accidentally left activated in the device's settings. Think about your own experience with wearable technology. Have you ever forgotten to turn off an alarm on your smartwatch and it buzzed at some random time during the day? It happens to everyone. Does a vibration that tells you it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon help you hit a perfect forehand winner down the line? Does a low battery warning improve your serve? Alcaraz's team is arguing that the answer is obviously no, and that the ATP is catastrophically confusing technological doping with standard modern athlete data management that happens across every professional sport on the planet. In a lengthy and strongly worded press release, Alcaraz's agent stated clearly, Carlos Alcaraz has never, and would never, use any form of unauthorized technology to gain an unfair advantage in competition. The device in question is used solely and exclusively for tracking sleep quality and recovery metrics, which is absolutely standard practice for elite athletes globally across every sport. The allegations of haptic coaching or real-time tactical signaling are not just wrong, they are technically impossible with the settings and configuration used on this specific device. We are cooperating fully with the investigation because we have absolutely nothing to hide, but we will not accept this slander against Carlos's character and integrity. And they're not fighting this battle alone. Whoop, the company itself, has entered the conversation in a massive way. Whoop CEO Will Ahmed has taken to social media and he is absolutely on the warpath defending both his product and his brand ambassador. He posted what has already become a viral statement: data is not steroids. Ahmed is arguing forcefully that the tennis authorities are technological dinosaurs who are terrified of innovation they don't understand and can't control. He points out that the Whoop strap doesn't have a screen. It doesn't have a speaker. It doesn't have a microphone. It's literally a fabric band with embedded sensors. The idea that it could actively coach a player mid-match is, in his words, pure science fiction invented by people who don't understand the technology they're regulating. Furthermore, there's a massive, glaring contradiction in how different tennis organizations treat this exact same technology. The ATP Tour allows these devices at regular tournaments. Players wear them every single week without any issues whatsoever. But the ITF, which governs Grand Slam tournaments, has been significantly slower to adapt their rules to the reality of modern sports technology. Carlos Alcaraz has worn this exact same Whoop band in dozens of tournaments over the past several years without a single complaint, without a single fine, without a single investigation. Why is it suddenly a $500,000 problem specifically in Melbourne? Is this genuinely a case of an outdated, antiquated rulebook written in a different era colliding head-on with the modern world of data-driven athletic performance? Or did someone on Alcaraz's team discover a loophole, a jailbreak, a hack of the device settings that transformed it from a passive monitor into an active coaching tool? That's the question investigators are desperately trying to answer. Let me get technical for a few minutes because this is where the story gets really fascinating from a technological and investigative perspective. The ATP mentioned using specialized equipment to conduct their investigation. We're talking about extremely sophisticated radio frequency scanners, signal interceptors, and forensic data analysis tools that sound like they belong in a spy agency rather than a tennis tournament. To actually prove that Carlos Alcaraz cheated, that he used technology to gain an unfair competitive advantage, officials need to conclusively prove two distinct things. First, they need to prove that the device vibrated, that haptic feedback occurred. That's relatively straightforward because the device itself logs these events internally. Second, and this is the much more difficult and crucial element, they need to prove that the vibration was triggered by an external source, by a signal sent from someone else, most likely someone in his coaching box. If the wristband vibrated simply because Alcaraz's body reached a certain strain level or heart rate threshold, that's an extremely gray area. You could argue that's just biofeedback. It's him competing against his own physiological responses. It's not fundamentally different from an athlete who has trained themselves to recognize when their breathing is getting out of control and consciously slowing it down. But if the investigation discovers hard evidence that a signal was transmitted from outside, from Juan Carlos Ferrero's smartphone or from a laptop computer in the player's box directly to the wristband on Alcaraz's arm, then we're looking at potentially the biggest, most devastating cheating scandal in tennis since the championship trophy on Sunday. Whether it's Alcaraz, Zverev, or someone else entirely, there will always be questions. There will always be doubt. This will forever be remembered as the year of the wristband scandal. Look, I'm going to give you my honest take on this entire situation, and you know I always keep it real here on Court Vision Plus. The rule is the rule. If the official regulations clearly state that haptic feedback devices are prohibited during Grand Slam competition, and if Alcaraz's device did vibrate during his matches, then technically yes, he broke the rule. Ignorance of the law is not a valid excuse in any area of life. If you drive 100 miles per hour on the highway because you didn't see the speed limit sign, you still get a ticket. The cop doesn't care that you didn't know. The law is the law. However, and this is a massive however, $500,000 and the label of technological doping feels excessive to the point of being punitive and vindictive. That feels like the ATP is trying to make a political statement and establish a precedent rather than solve a specific problem fairly. Unless investigators find absolute proof that Juan Carlos Ferrero or someone else on the team was actively pressing a button to send tactical coaching signals to Alcaraz's wrist during crucial points, this should be handled with a warning and a small fine. Take the device off, Carlos. Don't wear it again during Grand Slams. Learn the rules better. Move forward. That would be the proportional response. To suspend a semifinal? To raid his hotel room and seize his shoes and clothing like he's a criminal suspect? To put his career and reputation on trial in the global media? It feels like panic. It feels like tournament officials lost control of the narrative and are now overcompensating wildly to reassert their authority. Carlos Alcaraz is the future of tennis. He's the player who will carry this sport for the next decade after Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer are gone. You don't treat your future like a criminal unless you have absolute, undeniable, smoking gun proof of deliberate, malicious intent to cheat. I personally believe Carlos Alcaraz is innocent of intentional cheating. I think he's a tech-savvy young athlete who likes his data and his recovery metrics. I don't think he needs a vibrating bracelet to tell him how to hit a drop shot. He's Carlos Alcaraz. He was literally born hitting impossible drop shots. That's his natural talent. But I could be wrong. The data doesn't lie. If the forensic logs show exactly what the ATP claims they show, if there's undeniable evidence of external signals being transmitted during matches, then I'll be the first person to admit I was wrong and that appropriate punishment is necessary. We are in a holding pattern right now, waiting for the final decision, waiting for the conclusion of the investigation. The specialized equipment is presumably still scanning his equipment somewhere in the depths of Melbourne Park. Tournament officials are analyzing data. Lawyers are arguing. The world is holding its breath. Will Carlos Alcaraz be allowed to step onto Rod Laver Arena and play against Alexander Zverev? Will he be stripped of all his ranking points from this tournament? Will the $500,000 fine stand or be reduced? Will his reputation survive this scandal? We could have definitive answers within hours, or this could drag on for days. This is a developing story that's moving at incredible speed. Everything could change by the time you finish watching this. Is Carlos Alcaraz a victim of outdated rules and technological fear, or did he deliberately cross the line into cheating? Is a vibrating wristband really technological doping, or is the ATP massively overreacting to something they don't understand? Do you think he should be allowed to play the semifinal, or should he be disqualified immediately? Drop your thoughts, your theories, your hot takes in the comments right now. Let's have a real conversation about this. If you found this deep investigative dive into the scandal valuable, if you appreciated getting all the details and multiple perspectives, please smash that like button. It genuinely helps us get this important news out to more tennis fans who need to know what's happening. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Court Vision Plus and absolutely make sure you hit that notification bell, because we will be going live the very second the final verdict is announced. Whether Alcaraz is cleared or disqualified, whether he plays or forfeits, you'll hear it here first with complete analysis. You cannot afford to miss it. This is Court Vision Plus, signing off for now. Keep your eyes on the court, watch your wrists, and remember that in tennis, the only thing more unpredictable than the ball is the controversy.
Hola a todos, muy contento de poder jugar mi primera final aquí en las ATP Finals. Mañana partido contra Yannick, una vez más en su casa. Así que nada, espero que podáis. Hola a todos, nada, quería deciros que muy contento por poder jugar otra final en Wimbledon, un sitio muy especial para mí y nada, simplemente dar las gracias.
Working for you tonight in this match.
Well, I think everything. I hate it. Before every match, I always try to eat sushi. I love it. So that's try different